Welcome to the latest installment of the 30-Minute Workout Series. My name is Jeff Bartels, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Angel Espinosa, Stacy Morican, and Lou Holland. In today's session, we are going to pick up where we left off in the last session. If you remember, we are working on a 4-part series to help you get up and running using BIM Collaborate Pro to host your Civil 3D projects in the cloud. In Part 1, we learned how to access the cloud platform. We learned how to create a project, build out a directory structure, and upload and view files. In Part 2, we learned how to invite people to the project, control their properties, assign permissions, and we walked through a collaborative workflow where we assigned work to someone and then we were able to track that work to completion. In today's session, we are going to learn how to synchronize our Civil 3D environment with the cloud. As we've been working on these sessions, we've been taking a step-by-step approach to things, doing it all with live demonstration and focusing on the how and why. We've also been including practical examples to show you different ways you could take advantage of Autodesk's cloud platform. These sessions do have some ground rules. Some of the examples we show may be abstract in nature, and we do that on purpose. This way we can focus solely on how a tool works. Once you understand how the tool works, you can apply it in whatever situation works best for you. We value your time, so we're committed to always starting and ending on time. No need to take notes. These sessions are recorded. Anybody who has registered for the session will get access to a recording. If you have questions, please put those in the Q&A pane. It's the most efficient way for the folks working behind the scenes to find and respond to those questions. In the event we don't get to all the questions by the end of today's session, so long as we have your permission, we will get back to you with an answer. We've got a lot of things to talk about today. We're going to start by taking our first look at Desktop Connector. Desktop Connector represents the conduit that connects our Civil 3D environment to the cloud. Once we get into Desktop Connector, we'll see how we can use it to cache projects to our local machine. Having those projects cached allows us to have automatic file locking, unlocking, and synchronizing of our DWGs and other project-related files. We'll talk about the concept of file versioning and how we can control it. I'll share some helpful tips. We'll do another practical example. And at the end, I will share some additional resources that you can review prior to our next session. As always, this is going to be a PowerPoint-free zone. We'll be working live in the application for the duration of our time together today. Okay, let me drop out of this. As you can see, I'm starting out here through the web browser. I have logged into acc.autodesk.com and I'm on the welcome screen. I'm going to select this Wesley Road extension project that we've been working on. When I do, it takes me into the Docs module. Remember, this is the file store. Since we're going to be talking about DWG files today, I thought it would be nice to upload some DWG content into this environment. I'm going to start by creating a directory for that, and this will be a little bit of review from our first session. To create the directory, I'll click the ellipsis button here next to Project Files. From the menu, I'll choose Add Subfolder, and I'm going to call this directory CAD Files, and I'll press Enter. I will then select that new folder, and then to add content to this, I can do that by clicking the Upload Files button, or I can simply drag and drop from Windows Explorer. I'm going to do that. I'll bring up Windows Explorer, and then I will grab my exercise files, and I will drag and drop them into this environment. Let me mention that I am in no way migrating an existing Civil 3D project here. Migrating Civil 3D projects will have to be a topic for another day. For right now, I'm putting some DWG files up here so we have some content to look at. These files have no references, they're not connected in any way, nor are there any data shortcuts. I'm going to click Done. And while these files are being transferred, let's jump back to the PowerPoint momentarily, and we'll talk about Desktop Connector. Desktop Connector represents the conduit between your Civil 3D environment and the cloud. Desktop Connector is a free download. I'll be providing the hyperlink to that at the end of today's session. When you load Desktop Connector on your machine, it creates a drive letter called Autodesk Docs. And this drive letter is automatically synced with the cloud. This is where you will be opening and saving files from and to. And the contents that you put in there will automatically be locked, unlocked, and synced with the cloud, completely behind the scenes, transparent to the user. The beauty of Desktop Connector is that from Civil 3D's perspective, it still thinks it's working locally, which it is. So that means the learning curve to manage Civil 3D projects in the cloud is very small because it's a lot like working off of another drive letter. It's important to note that the Autodesk Cloud Platform is a very fast evolving technology. There are new features and functionality coming out all the time. To have access to the most features and functionality, Autodesk recommends using the latest version of Civil 3D and Desktop Connector. If you look down here, you can see that if you want to work in the cloud, at minimum, you would have to have Civil 3D 2020.2. In the interest of full disclosure, I am using Civil 3D 2024 today. Let me drop out of this, and I'll close this. Close this menu. When you load Desktop Connector on your machine, you will find it down here in your Windows system tray. If I hover over the icon, I can see the current build number. That's 16.5. That's the latest version of Desktop Connector. If I click to open that, here I can see a transactional history of all of the files that have been uploaded and downloaded to this environment. When you first load Desktop Connector, you will want to click this gear. This allows you to access your help and settings. From here, I can choose Select Projects. This is where we can select the projects that we would like to cache to our local machine. If you don't select projects, you will not see projects within your Windows Explorer environment. Let me show you what I mean. I'll click off screen to close that, and then I'm going to bring back Windows Explorer. And you can see right here, when we load Desktop Connector, we get this drive letter called Autodesk Docs. In that drive letter, I can see a folder that represents my account. And inside that folder, I can see the projects that I've chosen to cache on my local machine. Think of these projects as the ones that you're actively working on. Knowing that, let me come back over to Desktop Connector. And I'm going to click the gear, and I'll choose Select Projects. To select projects, we'll use this dialog box. Note that you can choose up to 40 projects. You can also add or remove projects at any point. To select projects, we'll start by selecting an account. Now I have access to more accounts than I should. In your case, you'll probably just see the one account for your firm. I'm going to open up this account called JWB Engineering ACC. And as I drag up and down, you can see the projects that are in that account. The ones with the toggles are the ones that I've chosen to cache locally. And so if I wanted to remove one, I would simply remove the check. I'm going to come down and I'll select that project Wesley Road Extension. And when I click Save, watch over here. As soon as I click Save, you'll see how that directory structure is now available on my local machine. I'm going to close this. If I double click on that project, I can go into the directory. Let's go into Project Files. Here's the CAD Files folder that contains the files that we just uploaded a second ago. Let me back up a directory. We'll go into Plan Sheets. If you remember, these are the PDFs that represent my current set of plans. So from a high level, this is the area that I'll be working in. This is where I'll be opening and saving my DWGs. When I plot new PDFs, I will plot them here, and this will automatically version them up in the cloud. Let's talk for a second about the status icons. When you see a cloud, it means that this file has yet to be opened or referenced on your machine. If you open a file, for instance, I'm going to open this PDF. I'll just double click on it. When that file is opened, it is pulled down to my local workspace and cached on my machine. If I drag this down, you can see the icon there. I can now work on this file. I can save it. As I save it, it's going to version up the one that's in the cloud. When I'm done working on this file and close it, that cached version is retained. This is a good thing because tomorrow, when I go to work on this file, if I open it, it's going to compare that cached version against the cloud version. And if they're the same, it'll simply open the cached version. No need to download that file again. When you're caching files on your machine, they will take up space. If you need to free up space, you can right-click on a file, and from the menu, you can choose Free Up Space. This will delete that cached version. You could do that at the file level. We can also do it at the folder level. We could do it at the project level. We could do it at the account level. Let me click off of this. I'm going to go back into Plan Sheets, and we'll talk about another setting. If I right-click on a file, from here I can choose Always Keep on this device. If I select that option, it will pull that file local to my machine, and then it will keep an eye on this file in the background. In the event somebody edits this file, creates a new version in the cloud, my machine will recognize it and it will download that file to my machine each time that file changes. Please note that when you adjust this setting, it is going to increase your internet bandwidth requirement for the downloads. So depending on your internet bandwidth, you may want to be judicious with this setting. Okay, let's close out of this. And I'm going to move my web browser over so we can see it on half the screen. Let's drag this over so I can see the versions. And then I've got Civil 3D open. Let's look at what it looks like to open one of these cloud files in Civil 3D. If you're going to open a file, even if it's in the cloud, we are going to open it the same way we have since the beginning of time. I'll come up and click the Open button. And then from here, I am going to navigate to that Autodesk Docs drive letter. I will go to my account. I will jump into the Wesley Road Extension folder. We'll go into Project Files, CAD Files, and I'm going to open up this file called Roadway Corridor. I'll select that. When I click Open, that file is pulled to my local machine. And if we look over in the web browser, you can see how that file is locked. If I hover over this icon, you can see I'm the guy who's got it locked currently. So I have ownership of that file. I can make changes to this. I can save those changes. That will version up the one here in the cloud. Other people can open this file if they want to, but it's going to open up read-only, just like it would on a local server. When I'm done working on this file, I'll click the X to close it, and when I do, we'll see how that lock is released. Okay, that's basically how the locking and unlocking works. I don't advocate having Civil 3D and the web browser open at the same time. I'm just showing you what's happening in the background. Now let's talk about creating a new file. If I'm creating a new file, whether it's for a local project or one in the cloud, the workflow is going to be the same. I'll click the Civil 3D icon, and then I'll come down and choose New. And I will select my template. So wherever the template lives today, that's where it's going to continue to live, even if I use it for a cloud project. I'm going to create some content here. I'm just going to draw a circle for this example. And when the time comes for me to save this, I'll click Save. I'm going to save this to my cloud project, and I'm going to call it Sample, and I'll press Enter. When I do, it's going to save it to that local folder, and then it'll get synced to the cloud. In fact, we can watch this happen. If I open up Desktop Connector, right there, you can see there's that file getting pushed to the cloud. And there we can see the file is arriving. In the web browser, it's locked because I have ownership of it. Okay, and it's processing. Now, as I continue to work on this file, I'm going to create some additional circles here. Maybe we'll do an arc. When I save my new version, once again, I will save that, get saved locally. Desktop Connector is going to push that to the cloud. We'll see that file arrive in the web browser any second. And then if you look in the version column, you can see how that was versioned up. Every time you save a file, it will create a new version in the cloud. Now, a little bit of review from our first session. If you remember, if you click the version icon here, it will show you the versions that are saved with your file. It retains every version. If you click the ellipsis button next to a version, from here, you can very easily roll a prior version back up to the top. Notice there are some other options here. I'm going to close this. After seeing that, you may think, well, when I'm working in the cloud, maybe this negates the need for BAKs because the cloud is essentially going to save every prior version. And that's correct. It saves every version. Very easy to restore a prior version if you want to. Some folks look at this and say, well, you know, that's nice, but maybe I would like to save the file local for most of the day, we'll say. And then maybe at the end of the day, I would like to save the file to the cloud. That way I have fewer versions, and those versions are more meaningful. We can do that as well. There is a free add-in that you can install that allows you to do local saves and cloud saves. And I'll be sharing the hyperlink where you can access this file at the end of today's session as well. If I go to the add-ins tab, you can see that I've installed this tool. This is the icon that I can use for local save. This is the one for the cloud save. Okay, now I have to admit, when I first installed this, I was asking myself, I wonder how that tool works. Where does that local save go? Let me show you. This tool takes advantage of your autosave functionality. If I right-click and come down to Options, in the Civil 3D Options here on the Files tab, I'll come down to Automatic Save File Location, and right here you can see the path to where my autosave files are going. I'm going to click on this a couple times to get access to that text, and then I'm going to copy it to my clipboard. And then we'll close this, and then I'm going to bring up Windows Explorer, and I'll paste that path up here, and I'll press Enter. So this is the contents of my autosave folder. So if I want to continue working on this file, I'm going to make some additional changes here. Maybe we'll put some more circles on here. When I'm going to save this, if I want to save it locally, I'll click the Local Save button, and you can see what happens. It gets saved right over here. That's the file name with an $SV extension. If you're familiar with the $SV extension, you know that this is essentially a DWG. You could simply replace that with DWG, and it would open up just like a regular file. So you are saving the file local doing this. Now, each time I save, it's going to overwrite the one here. So I can continue to save this throughout the day. And then when such time comes that I want to save this back to the cloud, I can click the Cloud Save button. And when I do, you can see really it's just launching the traditional QSave command. That's going to save it to Desktop Connector. It's going to push it up to the cloud, and then we'll see that arrive here in the cloud any second. And when that comes up, it will create that new version for me. Okay, so that's the way that tool works. When I'm finished working on this file, I can close it, and we'll see that file lock come off. All right, I'm going to maximize this. Let me share a couple of helpful items when it comes to Desktop Connector. When you load Desktop Connector, it creates that cached area on your local machine. Your cached projects by default are stored on your C drive. Now you can change that if you want to. You can put your cache on any local drive on your machine. You could do that at the point of installation, or you can do it afterward. If I come down to Desktop Connector, click the gear, and then go to Help, there's an option here, Change Workspace. Now, if I try and change the workspace now, it's going to bark at me and say, hey, you've got cached files in your current workspace. You need to take those out first. So I would have to go back to the project selection. I would have to remove the toggles to remove these projects from the current workspace, and then I could come back and I could put this workspace on a different local drive letter. Let me close that, and I'll close this. One more thing. Remember that Desktop Connector represents the conduit between your local environment and the cloud. There could be a lot of moving parts there. Everything from obscure antivirus applications to internet bandwidth to local IT protocols can affect the performance of Desktop Connector. In the event you're having challenges with Desktop Connector, what you can do, come down, click the icon, click the gear, and then come down to Help and choose Diagnostic Logs. Desktop Connector maintains a log of all the transactions that it has back and forth with the cloud, and it will include additional information, specifically places where it's having trouble. If I choose Diagnostic Logs, I can export these to a zip file. And we can see the zip file by clicking Open File Location right there. So if you're having challenges with Desktop Connector, what you could do is log a support ticket, and then you can include the diagnostic logs with the support ticket, and then the support technician can review the logs and help you troubleshoot what the issue may be. Let me drop out of this. Let's look at a practical example. I'd like to use the technology we've seen today to export a Civil 3D file to the cloud such that it can be viewed on a mobile device. Specifically, I've been asked if it's possible to carry a Civil 3D design out in the field on a smartphone or a tablet such that I can walk around a site and know where I am within the context of my design. We can actually do that using the Construction Cloud. I'm going to open a drawing. I'll click Open, and I'll open up this site plan that I uploaded a little bit ago. This drawing represents a proposed fast food restaurant design. This is our chicken and waffles data set we've used for a little while. Now, at the risk of destroying the end of the movie here, when I'm viewing this file in the field, I'm actually going to be able to view it through Google Earth. And Google Earth doesn't recognize Civil 3D objects very well. I've got a pipe network in here with some structures and pipes, and I've got feature lines. So to view this in the field, to make it look the best, I'll need to convert this geometry into vanilla AutoCAD entities. I can do that very easily using a command called Export to AutoCAD. And I'm going to keep the prefix that it puts on this. I'm going to save it in the same project directory, and I'll click Save. So that just converted my geometry into AutoCAD entities. Let's take a look at what we got. I'm going to choose Open, and then I will open this file that we just saved. There we go. So now if I hover over the entities in here, I can see these are AutoCAD things now. I've got a block. That's not a pipe anymore. That's a line. These are 3D polylines instead of feature lines. Okay. Before I do the export, I want to do one more thing. I am going to select all of this geometry, and I'll come over to the Properties palette, and I'm going to give it a line weight of 0.05 millimeters. I do that because Google Earth is going to honor that line thickness, and since this geometry is going to be displayed on top of an aerial photo, it'll make it easier to see. I'll press Escape. Now we're ready to export this file for use in the field. I'll do that by going to the Toolbox tab, and in the Miscellaneous Utilities area, I'm going to go to Export KML. I'll double-click to launch that command. I'm going to keep the default name. I'm not going to add a description or a hyperlink. Let me click Next. What do I want to export? I would like to export the selected objects. I will select these. No need to export text or object information or materials. I just need to see the geometry. Let me click Next. This file is located based on state plane coordinates, so I'm going to keep that geolocation. Let me click Next. Here I can adjust the nudge if I want to change the elevations at all. Everything in here is based on survey data, so I don't want to adjust elevations. I do want to drape these objects onto the ground because I don't know what surface is being used in Google Earth, so just take the geometry and drape it on your surface. Let's click Next. Here's where I can export that file. I'm going to click the ellipsis button. And then I'll come down to that Autodesk Docs drive letter. I'll choose my account, and I'm going to save this into my Chicken and Waffles project. This is another project I'm working on that I've got cached to my local machine. I'm going to save this in the Field Files folder, and rather than saving this as a KML, I'm going to save it as a KMZ. That will work better. I will then choose Save, and we'll choose Export. And I'll choose Close. Okay, so that file was just saved locally. Desktop Connectors pushed it to the cloud, and it's now available for folks in the field. I wish I could do a live walkthrough with my mobile device. However, I am not at this site currently, so if you'll indulge me, I'm going to come back down to my PowerPoint. I did record that walkthrough. So here you can see I'm at the site with my phone. Now the walkthrough I'm doing is with a phone. You could also do it with a tablet, both iOS or Android. On my phone, I've got the Autodesk Construction Cloud app. You can see the icon in the lower right corner. This is kind of a little review from what we did in the first session. I'll tap to open the application, and then I can tap to select my project. I will then navigate to the folder containing that KMZ file. So we'll just tap Field Files here, and then I will tap to open the KMZ. And when I do, it says, hey, we don't recognize that file format, but if you want, we'll let you open it using another application. That's perfect. I'll tap on Screen. I will swipe over and tap More, and then I will drag up and I will tap on the Google Earth application. When this opens up through the Construction Cloud, it's kind of floating me out in space here. So I'm going to tap in the upper left corner of the screen, and from here I can choose Projects. This shows me the KMZ file, and from there I'm going to go under Model, and I'm just going to tap on one of the entities, and that will zoom me in on that area. This way I don't have to zoom in on it manually. As it zooms in, I can continue to pinch outward and center this on the screen if I want to. I can then swipe down to close the menu at the bottom of the screen. And then most importantly, I'll tap the Locate button to find me on this site. And this is all real time. You can see it just takes a second. When I recorded this, I was parked at the end of that frontage road at the southwest corner of the site. Let me zoom in a little bit more. What I did, I'm capturing my phone. I'm also carrying a GoPro camera. So as I walk around now, we can see both environments, and you can see that as I walk, the icon is moving on the phone. So very easy to see where I am within the confines of my design. I'm going to start by walking down to this first entrance. And rather than having you watch me walk at my normal pace, I've sped this up. So it's kind of like I'm jogging, I suppose. Here I can walk down to the first entrance. Very easy to see where I am. And I can see where that geometry or where that location relates to the real world. Having access to a feature like this is wonderful. It can make your site visits more meaningful. I actually worked on a project where a utility pole was missed, and it wasn't noticed until we were getting ready for construction, and that utility pole was actually conflicting with the entrance to a parking lot. Here I've walked to the area where the drive-through pickup window is. Very easy to see where that is on my phone and see how that relates to the real world. Now, when I was out there, I did ask myself, I wonder how well this is actually locating me in the real world. If you look on the phone, in the northwest corner, there is an existing sidewalk that terminates there. So I decided I'm going to walk over to that sidewalk and see how close it positions me, because when I get there, the blue dot should be at that same location. And you can see as I approach that area, it's pretty much right on the money. If it's off, it's only off by about a foot or two. So really nice functionality that I can do site walks and carry my design with me. I'm doing that using the Construction Cloud. I'm just exporting my Civil 3D file to Desktop Connector to get it in the cloud, and then I'm able to access Google Earth through the Autodesk Construction Cloud app. Okay, I've got some additional resources to share with you. These resources will be provided to everybody that has the link to the video. I'll also place these down in the description. So I've got the link where you can download the Desktop Connector app. I've got the link to download the local save tool for collaboration for civil. And I've got a hyperlink that will allow you to access the help documentation for Desktop Connector. Wonderful resource. It's got a ton of information, far more than what we had a chance to talk about today. This could be great stuff to look at prior to our next session. We looked at a lot of things today. We looked at Desktop Connector and how it connects our environment to the cloud. We saw how we could select projects to sync to our local machine. We saw how the files accessed through that synced location will automatically lock and unlock behind the scenes in the cloud. We saw how file versioning works and how we can control it using that local save tool. Shared a couple helpful tips. We walked through a practical example to geolocate us on a site, and I've provided some additional resources. In our next session, which is just next week, We'll take our first look at external referenced files. We'll look at how we can create and manage data shortcuts, create and manage sheet sets. I'll also provide some additional best practices. We'll do another practical example, and I'll share some final additional resources. In the event there are any questions that have gone unanswered at this point, so long as we have your permission, we will get back to you with an answer. On behalf of Stacy Morikan, Lou Holland, Angel Espinosa, and myself, I want to say thank you so much for coming. We value your time. We hope you find value in these sessions, and we look forward to seeing you again at the next 30-minute workout.